across all at my ANC platforms for the benefit of our members and the rest of society. Over to you, Deputy Secretary General.
Thank you very much and good evening. We had an NWC meeting on the 24th, which was on Monday.
Yesterday.
Yes. And the NWC sits every 2 weeks. The NWC's function is to execute decisions of the NEC, and it also examines and looks at the conditions of work that's been done in the ANC over a period of time. So every 2 weeks, whatever's happened in the organization, we would receive a report on and discuss. This Monday, we discussed, we looked at the COVID-19 pandemic. We spent quite a bit of time. Fear and concern that the pandemic is rising. On Monday, when we met, we were told that approximately 3,000 people a day were being infected. And that, of course, did necessitate a bit of alarm amongst us. The concern we were having was whether this was urban-based, and yes, it is urban-based. Gauteng, Free State, and KZN seem to be the areas of major concern. And so we're not sure what the reaction of the government will be, but we're anticipating that there might be a change in the regulatory framework. We're not sure what that is because that doesn't come to us. We were extremely happy with the enthusiasm with which older citizens responded to the call to register for the vaccine and went out to actually get the vaccine. I myself did go. I've got my first shot, and I'll wait for the second one. Amongst those who have gone is Archbishop Desmond Tutu, Sophie de Bruyn, Bishop Lechanyane, and also Comrade Brigadier Baum, the former chair of the IEC, and trade unionist Pat Horn. They assisted, in fact, to get people and encourage them to go. We also discussed Africa Day, and as you know, it is Africa Day today, and the key issues in our points of discussion was that the milestones of African unity and development, what it had reached this year, and what we're interested in, and we hope the next time we speak, we will have a report to talk about the intra-Africa infrastructure development, which is a core matter for the African free trade area, and the hope in the hope of us being able, as the continent, to move trade between African countries more swiftly. But this is also the year of arts, culture, and heritage on the continent, and we also thought that we should look at the critical role that creative and heritage sectors play in our sense of identity, especially in our country, in the economy, and in our history. And we also know, of course, as you know, there's been a bit of controversy in our country about the state of the economic state of creative workers in South Africa. With regard to Palestine, we received a report about all the various actions that have been taken throughout the country. We've had marches and protests in East London. We have had today 2 in Durban and in Tshwane. Several other smaller ones have taken place throughout the country involving the entire alliance, and that was an alliance committee, campaigns committee decision that we all worked together, including we congratulated the dock workers for the action that they took, and we affirmed the support for the inalienable right of to self-determination of the Palestinian people, and for negotiation towards a viable two-state solution. So that was our campaign. Then we received a fairly intense presentation on the by-elections. And it is that time when the ANC begins to look very cautiously at what's happening with by-elections. As you know, we retained all the 27 wards that we defended, and we gained 3 new wards that were from other political parties. Of course, our major concern right now is because of COVID-19, the turnout was not that great. And we are concerned as to the impact that COVID-19 might have on the local government election in October this year. And we're looking forward to the investigation that the IEC has put in place. And of course, whatever the outcome of that is, our hope is that we should have the elections this year. Local government is the pivotal area for delivery of services, and it is a vitally important area for the ANC to strengthen. As you are aware, we look very minutely at some of the difficulties that are experienced in some of the local municipalities across the board. It's some municipalities, not all, and one of the problems is, of course, when people talk about the problem, they aggregate it as if it's every local government everywhere in the country, but there are approximately 13 local authorities that really are having difficulties. And our focus in the next couple of weeks will be those municipalities. Madibeng, Likwa, as you know, has already been put under administration of the National Treasury. We're looking at all the 6 metros with great interest. We'd like to win them all very, very decisively. So the plan is to work very hard in the next couple of months to make sure of that. So what we then did was we discussed our approach to the selection of candidates, what we are going to do. The ANC system is that we allow our branches to select 4 candidates for a ward, 2 men and 2 women. And then 6 candidates are discussed for the PR list in every branch. Now, we have asked our branches to do the BGMs until the 15th of June as a deadline. What then will happen is immediately after they have done their BGMs, convene a community meeting. The difficulties of COVID are going to make it impossible for us to have very big community meetings. We'll have to stick to the numbers of 250, but try to have a well-balanced meeting of as many sectors in the community as possible. Present the 4 candidates, and the community then votes. The person with the highest number of votes from the community is likely to be the candidate. Some of the concerns we have, and we put it to you, is that we have a policy on gender parity. And what we're experiencing at the moment is a rise in patriarchy on the ground. Communities, when they have the popular vote, veer towards electing a man. So we will have to find a way of balancing that very clearly and making sure that we emerge with a list that is on par with the policies of the ANC. It's work that needs to be done in our society with regard to the respect that people have for the capabilities of women. So that's what's going to happen. We also have put in place an independent elections committee led by the former president of the country, Comrade Mutlanti, and he works with a team of people. They will act as a sounding board, a place where people will go to if they have complaints. They put out guidelines that would enable people what can happen in terms of what happens in the branch when you're electing, what happens at the community level meeting, and so on. They also put out a document which they've sent to all branches, which really explains very cryptically what everyone must do once they get to the meeting. They'll also deal with disputes, if disputes arise, and so on. One of the things we're going to do this time around, we'll pay special attention to young people. Not only young people as representatives for the ANC in local government, but first-time voters, especially those who not yet have identity documents. So part of our campaign will be a really extreme getting your ID document campaign. Also that we We'll make sure that we engender an understanding that where we've succeeded very well in our by-elections, it's also where we've introduced a young youth force. And that is a fact. It's just coming back to, let's put it that way, and it's an important thing to register. People are gravitating towards young, educated people as their community councillors. It's a good thing, but also experience does count, and we don't want our constituency to look away from older people with real experience and that have done very good work. We're also discussing the Concord decision and the prospect of putting in place a new electoral system. We're far from any kind of solution, but as you know, the court's given 24 months for parties to respond on what we think should be a new electoral system. We have a proportional based system at local government level and a different system at national level. There are many arguments, I'm not going to go into that, but the NWC did discuss that, and that's ongoing work. Then in terms of our organization itself, over 3,000 branches now have had their BGMs. We're shorting around 1,000, it's 1,400 that must still go and have their BGMs. They have to finish, as we said, the entire process by the 15th of June. One of the things that is difficult for the ANC is that we have aligned our branches to the existing wards in the country. So when there's a new demarcation, you have to change the whole ward structure, and membership have to be moved from one branch to the other. The NWC also discussed that at length. So we're hoping that our work and the depth of our work will be seen in due course. Northern Cape has done extremely well. Small province. They will be going to a provincial conference over the weekend. They've completed most of their regional conferences. We congratulated them. They had a legal challenge which they won, and we thought that it was good that they won it. Individuals who take the ANC to court in this way, disputing legitimate processes of the ANC and equating that with the court system in this regard is a little bit uncomfortable, but we've done that. We also discussed in Mpumalanga, as you know, we set up a special task team to look at an incident of violence that happened in the Nkomazi sub-region in Ntlangeni. What we agreed as the NWC is that Nkomazi sub-region can go ahead with all their BGMs now. We're satisfied that the issues that were plaguing the sub-region have abated, but we'll still keep a very watchful eye on what happens next in that area. On the Free State, at Comrade Kgalema Motlanthe, we're giving him a lot of work to start a unity process in the Free State. He began work by gathering people from different perspectives and began discussing what is the way forward. Firstly, there is a need for a provincial structure that will take control of the east of the Free State, even if it is on an interim basis. He provided us with a list of names that agreed in bilateral meetings between the groupings, and we approved those names. The names are Comrade Nkolisi Dukwana as a convener, Comrade Sifura Ntombela as a deputy convener, Paseko Nompondo as the coordinator, Comrade Mutswaneng as a deputy coordinator, Saki Mukwena, Moritle Noi. We'll give you the list. It's a long list. Hopefully you'll publish it, please, because there are many lists that have been making rounds, but this is the authentic list in your statement, if you don't mind. They quite mixed, come from various parts of the province. There are 8 young people in the list, quite young people, some under the age of 35, and that's a good sign that they did that. Then on integrity and disciplinary matters, the NWC supported the application to oppose the urgent application by the Secretary General to set aside his temporary suspension in terms of Rule 2570 of the ANC Constitution. So today was the deadline for us to present our affidavits, and that has been done. Now, we also had received some reports from provinces about people in the provinces that have already been asked to step aside, and others who have not stepped aside have been written letters of suspension. So there is a provincial movement as well, and that's also been happening. And there are two people affected in Parliament who have also been requested not to take up any executive authority positions, such as chairs of committees, but they remain as parliamentarians. The NWC also discussed the possibility of investigating disciplinary action against some members of the ANC. Now, I want to explain to you the DC process of the ANC, and it would be incorrect for me to give you names because that immediately disadvantages the people involved. And I see there are names in the statement, which is unfortunate, but this is how it happens. We have somebody called a chief presenter in the ANC. That person is requested to investigate charges against any person who is identified as having had a misdemeanor. The chief presenter works with the team, will make a proposal not to the NEC, not to the NWC, not to anybody, but he begins to draft charges or not. If there's no evidence, if there's just an accusation that says so-and-so did something wrong, and the investigation proves that nothing was wrong, there's no charge. But if there's a genuine charge in terms of all the Rule 25 of our Constitution, then they would confer a charge on a person. The person has the right to respond within 2 weeks of receiving a charge sheet to say why they should not be charged, and give mitigating information as to what that would have occasioned them to behave in a particular way. It's only after that that the National Disciplinary Committee would sit and have a hearing. Every person is entitled to come to the hearing with an ANC member in good standing as somebody who speaks on their behalf. They can also call witnesses to the hearing. The hearings are held in camera, they're very fair, and the outcomes of the hearing are put in a report by the NDC directly to the affected parties, and they inform the NEC of their decisions. So, for example, to be the appeals team for when a person has been, when the Integrity Commission has a finding against the person, they can go to this committee and appeal against them. The NEC becomes the final arbiter. If the person still is not satisfied, they can ask for the NEC to review that appeal committee's decision. But we try and be as fair as we can, and the ANC does work on the basis of justness and fairness in its internal processes. We also tabled a report from the Alliance Secretariat, and we informed the NWC that we will be having an Alliance Political Council on the 4th and 5th of June this year. We will also have an Alliance Summit later in the month or in July to look at the economy and matters of political importance to all Alliance partners. I think that takes us to the, okay. The only other thing we talked about is with alarm, we noted the number of veterans and leaders who had passed away in a short space of 3 weeks. Stan Sangweni, who we all would know as a professor, and he was one of the first commissioners of the public service. Ambassador Ismail Kubadia, who was South Africa's ambassador to Israel, but he was also a long-standing anti-apartheid activist and was in exile in London. Comrade Dr. Konji Sibati, a veteran. Comrade Tembi Nobadula, who passed away also in London. Comrade Joe Jongile, Comrade Nicolas Pedro from Keiko in the Western Cape. And then a Kwaito musician who's had a long relationship with the ANC, Mojalefe Njokes Mtsani, and Dr. Sponono Baloi. So that's the end of our briefing to you. I'm happy to take your questions.
Yes, no, thanks. Thanks very much, DSG. Yes?
Thank you so much.
You will come, Bali, and then
Yes, thank you so much, Mr. Duarte. It's Govan here from ANC. The statement says that the NWC instructed the national presenter to look at preferring charges against those individuals in relation to their conduct outside the court case of former President Jacob Zuma. In the last NEC meeting, the decision of the meeting had been that it would discuss whether or not to pursue disciplinary charges against the Secretary General for his failure to apologize, which is a different matter entirely. I just wanted to check, what did the NWC note the fact that the suspended Secretary General didn't apologize? What was their decision on his failure to apologize? And then, did the NWC get any indication whether an appeals process would be set up for the suspended Secretary General to appeal his suspension, as the impression created last time was that it's not the normal appeals process of the Secretary?
Okay. Firstly, on the issue of the Secretary General and other people, we still have to follow the process, no matter what we might say. We might have an emotional need to say something. However, the process has to be very thoroughly followed. So the NWC has asked the presenter to provide what we call charges. The presenter cannot provide charges without a thorough investigation. He has to convince. He has to be convinced also that there was a breach. The obvious breaches would be, yes, in 48 hours, no apology, and so on. But it is not correct to discuss those matters because we are not. I cannot disadvantage in whatever I say any one of the people. The presenter has the authority to make the finding and to say, well, it might look obvious, but and it might look artificial at this point to put it like that to you. But if we don't follow the rules very strictly, we end up in unnecessary litigation. And from the time of the infringement, the presenter only has 60 days within which to present charges. If the presenter fails to present charges within 60 days, it falls away, and that's a problem. So he's got to work fairly fast and fairly quickly. It is a him, so I can say that. Rule 25.70 does not have an appeals process. Unfortunately, we must just assert that very properly. 2570 is a protective clause. It's the only protective clause in the constitution of the ANC that is protective towards the ANC. It is not punitory, it is actually precautionary. In other words, a person is temporarily suspended, not suspended forever. You are temporarily suspended until a period of a particular incident or a particular matter has passed. In this instance, it is relative to people who've been criminally charged in a court of law. And that's what it is about. And it is literally the only clause in our constitution that doesn't provide for review.
I'm Balita Tadi from Newsroom Africa. DSG here, speaking about this issue around the appeals process. The SG has said that, the suspended SG said that he will be appealing, and you had said that Homa Shakila, the Treasury General, will be leading that process in terms of an appeal. So how far did that end up? Because you had said that it's something that you're still going to address, you're still going to fine-tune the rules around it. So how did you come to the decision saying that you will completely rule it out and it won't form part of, you can't really have your charges appealed? Another issue that I also wanted to touch on is the issue around, of course, the last time we also spoke, you wouldn't give us a clear indication of how many people have been affected by the step-aside resolution. Do we know now how many people are expected to step aside or have stepped aside, who has voluntarily stepped aside? Do we have a clear indication? Yeah, I think that's all for me.
Okay, firstly, I just want to repeat to you that Rule 2570, under which the Secretary General is temporarily suspended, does not have an appeals component. However, any matter that goes to the Integrity Commission, and the Integrity Commission, for instance, may ask a person to step aside. We've now put in place an appeals team to deal with that. So the Secretary General and any other person may appeal to that committee based on findings of the Integrity Commission, but not on Rule 2570. Rule 2570 is a protective and a preemptive clause that protects the ANC. It is not to punish people. It is to provide space to both the ANC and the person who has been charged criminally in a court of law to deal with the matter in the period when they are facing their charges. So how many people? I don't want to tell you what isn't accurate. And I mean, I can give you a few names, but for instance, there's Mike Mabuyakulu in KZN, who's definitely stepped aside. The Eastern Cape sent us a preliminary list of 3 people, but they indicated that there are more. So they haven't yet completed all the work that they're supposed to do, but they are beginning to ask people to step aside. And I do want to say you will understand the caution that our provinces are exercising. For instance, in Limpopo, 2 people have been asked to step aside and they haven't as yet. So there is, this is not an easy process, and it's not a process that we can deal with without sensitivity. It is a process that extreme maturity and sensitivity on the part of ANC leaders everywhere, because it does deal with a person very directly, and it's not a small matter, it's a major matter. So I think our provinces are exercising some concern. Some are double checking. In one province that sent a letter, they thought a person had been criminally charged. And we asked them to check again. And when they checked again, those charges had been withdrawn. So we're saying, look, don't go with the media report. Investigate it yourself. Find the person and talk to them and get paperwork. Ask for paperwork. Ask for a charge sheet. Ask for a letter. Ask for anything that will make sure that you're making an incorrect assumption, and that's what we would really prefer people to be more thorough them to be quick. And this may take a few more weeks, but we can be patient. There's no one in, thus far, in the PECs, it's only in Limpopo that there's been 2 people. And there's no one in any other PEC that I'm aware of right now. And there's no further NEC members that I'm aware of. We're waiting for regional reports. There are 53 regions of 54 regions of the ANC. They might take a bit longer, but we only met with the regions and the provincial secretaries last week. So they were asked last week. That's about maybe 8 days ago, and they might take a bit longer. And I don't know if we're ever going to be able to give you a very accurate. This is the number, I don't want to venture a guess.
SABC News. Jessie, I noted that you touched on and raised concerns on the rise of COVID-19.
Yes.
Last week in Johannesburg, you saw and heard the suspended SG, saying that he was going to pass people from Free State. Basically, one could view that as an invitation to others. Aren't you concerned about looking at where we are? Aren't you concerned about a senior leader within the movement, saying that, and also just to sneak something in from DSG? The other issue is this reoccurring issue of behavior within the ANC. We know the ANC's position with regards to attending court cases or showing support. That you don't need to do that under the banner of the ANC. But you've seen some leaders using that as a platform to ventilate or talk about ANC issues. Aren't you concerned as the ANC about that reoccurring of type of behavior?
Firstly, I can inform you that in a conversation I had with the SG yesterday on this matter, he informed me that he was not going to call for people to be bused to the Free State, and I think he's made a in that regard. I saw something on the on News 24 today. So I think he has withdrawn his call to do that, which is a good thing, and we congratulate him for doing that. He also said that he was doing that because of concerns about COVID. Secondly, yes, when leaders go to a platform and they use that platform to raise issues they were not successful in raising in the formal structures of the ANC, and ventilate and create an impression that is perhaps their own perspective, that there's a broader group of people that feel the same way that they do. It is for that reason that we've asked the presenter to look at the people and to investigate and to make sure that there is the possibility of misdemeanor. And we can't sit here and judge right now, but we are concerned that people do that. We're also extremely concerned with the social media utterances, the constant outbursts, the challenges that people who actually have the opportunity to raise matters in the NEC or in a PEC or in a structure of the ANC, ventilate those in social media and attract all manner of support for themselves and all manner of comment. Sometimes when you evaluate the comment, you would understand that social media attracts people who are quite flippant sometimes without an understanding of the deeper issues, or very serious people who become very unhappy. So yes, the answer to your question is yes, we are concerned. And for that reason, we are taking steps and asking our presenter to look at the matter.
I'm with the SABC, DSG. On the issue of the step aside, when the ANC moved to ask people to step aside or to implement the step aside resolution, did you anticipate any resistance from those who would be affected? And possibly, did you again look at what would you say maybe to people who are saying it seems the ANC, although it's a voluntary organization, it seems the ANC now wants its constitution to supersede that of the constitution, whereby ultimately they would suffer as a result of a temporary suspension, because it seems now they are guilty, they need to prove themselves innocent in a court of law. How then do you deal with that? And very secondly, I've seen that you led a march in Pretoria about the march in Pretoria about the Palestine, what's happening in Palestine. The issue of self-determination by the Palestinians and the two-state solution have been there for some time. As the ANC, what do you say to multilateralism? Because it seems this issue has been on the table of the UN Security Council for some time, but there hasn't been any sort of a workable solution to the crisis in Palestine. Yeah. And on the, maybe finally, an invitation to have communities participating in the selection of your councillors. It's not a new thing, although it has come in a different form this time around, where you have 4 people. But that on its own has caused a problem. Has caused a problem in the past. How then do you envisage this being managed going forward?
Let me start with the last question first, if you don't mind. You know, in the old days, you used to have to go and collect 3,000 signatures before you could be admitted as a candidate for councils. I don't know if you remember that. Long ago. So it would then give the community an opportunity to get involved in selecting the person that will be very directly responsible for important things in their lives. You know, water, electricity, sewage, roads, some internal roads, not all roads, libraries, bus stops. I can't think of all the many things that local authorities do. But we thought this through, and we decided that we cannot remove that element from the community. As much as we are a liberation movement and we're a political entity and we want to have our own person there, we also have to recognize that a community has a right to choose. And we would rather have the community choose with us the person that they want and feel that this is our choice. Now, in these 27 wards that we won, we tested this system and it worked very well. And I need to tell you that. I mean, we tested it properly because we said, look, let's not fool around with this. Let's see what in fact happens. In 2 instances, the community did not choose any one of the 4 people that we brought. They instead asked for 2 other people who fortunately were from the broader alliance. You know, the one was from COSATU, one was from the party. That's fine. But it is a important historical mechanism for us in democracy, is that you cannot avoid the fact that people have a right to make a choice. As much as you as a political party might have a right to choose a person, they too must say, I like Pule, or no, I don't want Pule. I'd rather, you know, go with somebody else. The problems that it caused in the past were not problems that were given to us by the community in 2016. It was when the community chose somebody that was an ANC person, and the REC and the PEC in some instances decided they would go against the choice of the community. And that created a problem. That is the problem that we're trying to answer, and we feel that we must continue along this trajectory. It's the correct thing to do. On Palestine, we are of the view that it's not up to, you know, when we were struggling, we always accepted the assistance of the international community for our cause. But what we didn't want was them to tell us what we needed to have at the end of that period. We didn't want them to tell us the design and what we should do. We didn't want them to even sit in on our CODESA talks, if you recall. We were very clear that the product must be South, and it must be South African in all its denominations, colors, and perspectives. In the same way, I think the Palestinians, all 12 organizations in Palestine, have that same right to choose what is the best outcome for them. Up to now, Palestine has put forward, the PLO in particular, and recently they've been joined by some other organizations, has put forward that the only solution is to go back to the borders, the 1960 borders, and to have a two-state solution, and bring back the integrity of the land that belongs to the people of Palestine, and deal with the issue of land that has been taken away, the constant removal of people from their land, the bombing of children and women and people. The recent bombing took over 200 lives. So our concern is that it would seem as if and we want to be very clear that the state of Israel and the people of Israel are not exactly the same thing, because this is a military junta. It's military people that run the state of Israel. And it's been like that for a while. People that come from the army and so on. And they seem to, there's this thing they call the lobby, the Zionist lobby. And they seem to have quite a bit of sway over the thinking in major countries like the United States and in some of the European Union member countries. And that bedevils the possibility for a solution to be found that is not as biased as the solutions up to now have been. All the solutions up to now, all the resolutions, the UN resolutions sound fantastic. Actually, when you read them, you think, wow. But the implementation of those solutions never see the light of day, because they get blocked in the Security, where there are 6 countries that make up the Security Council, and they veto. They use their right to veto. So our view is that in countries like ours and many other countries with a progressive perspective must continue to build an international solidarity movement to work with the people of Palestine, and to put pressure on the UN, on the EU, even on the AU, even though the AU in its last meeting did come a long way towards a much better perspective of
Ambassador Comrade, when you're speaking about Palestine.
Yes.
Yes. I got a message that we should also just mention it on
Yes,
the standards that passed on. Yes.
Okay. So there is a view that we have that we will support what the Palestinians do. And I do want to say to you that we talk to all of the groupings in Palestine, and we're not just selecting one. We're also saying, as the ANC, we'll talk to Israelis as well. But the Israeli state must understand that we cannot be their friend at a time when they are raining bombs on the people of Palestine. They can't expect us to be sympathetic. They can't expect us to have a view that says, there can be a friendship. There can't be. We cannot have a friendship with people who do not respect human rights and who look away from the rights of people to self-determination and pretend that there was never a place like Palestine and there is no such thing as a Palestinian person. And those two things are the fundamentals of this problem. It's not about religion. I want to be very clear that although since this afternoon, messages, anti-Semitic, very big attacks here. You cannot be, I am not anti-Semitic, neither is the ANC. What we are is concerned about the human rights atrocities that are happening by the state of Israel against the people of Palestine. And that is what we will continue to mobilize people for as much as we can. We will go to every progressive other organization in other countries and talk to them. Today, our alliance was with us. And we're very proud of the fact that workers on the docks took a stand. And when people do that without being asked, then you must really recognize that a level has been reached where people, South African people are realizing there's a problem here. And you know, this wrong message that when you attack the state of Israel, you're attacking Israel of the Bible is not correct. The state of Israel was brought about after the Second World War, and the Israel of the Bible is centuries old, and they're very different things, and they must not be confused. You know?
Deborah asked a question about the Constitution.
Of the ANC.
And I would like to just before you answer it, mine is also on the same question. Where the suspended Secretary General is now taking the ANC to court in an unprecedented way, challenging the very constitution of the party. This hasn't happened before, and I'd like to know whether there is a level of concern in the NWC the party's constitution could be declared unconstitutional or not in line with the constitution of the country. Is that a real risk that you foresee, or you don't think this will be a problem? And just on the unprecedented nature of this court application.
You know, firstly, voluntary organizations in this country might be declared unconstitutional if they go against the Bill of Rights. Our Constitution does not offend the Bill of Rights in any way. The Constitution of the ANC does not offend in any part, any portion of the Constitution of the Republic of South Africa. You join the ANC voluntarily, and you take an oath when you join the ANC to abide as a member of the ANC by its constitution and the rules that are contained therein. That's the first thing to say. So you make that decision on your own. No one is dragging you to do that. No one takes you and says, thou will, you know, you do that on your own. In recent history, you know, let me remember the people who've stepped aside voluntarily and who they are. Spoon Debele, overseas veteran, ambassador to Australia, was accused of some tender issue, stepped aside from the NEC immediately, came home from Australia on his own. Didn't have to be asked. When the trial was over and his name was cleared, he went back to Durko and said, well, I'm cleared. You know, can I get my job back? And they gave him his job back. He still remains a member of the ANC. There's a stalwart like Paulo Jordan, whose history in the ANC is second to none. I mean, this is one of the ideologues of the ANC. He was accused of something. He chose not to embarrass the ANC because he thought it would be embarrassing to the ANC. He stepped aside. There's Mike Mabuya Kulu, who's waited 5 years for the court to actually take him to court. He stepped aside. You know? There's Mdu Manana, young, was accused of an incident. He stepped aside as a deputy minister and stepped aside. He took that decision, young as he was, voluntarily. I can go on and on and on. I mean, there are numbers. So it is unprecedented for a senior leader of the ANC not to want to protect the organization in terms of Rule 2570 and accept the organization's discipline in this regard. And most people who have stepped aside voluntarily actually do come back, join back in the ANC, and they are given the space to do whatever it is they can do and offer their services to the people and to the ANC if they are cleared. There's also, for instance, John Block. Immediately he was charged, he stepped down as the chairperson of the Northern Cape and he left his job as an MEC. He was MEC. You know, Marius Fransman, chairperson of the Western Cape, similarly. I think it is unprecedented. It is a difficulty, and we're not going to discuss the merits of what we're presenting as our affidavits. That would not be correct, and we cannot discuss the matter now. And we hope the media will give us the space to fight for the ANC's constitution and for our rights. And we need to enable NGOs and organizations like ourselves to be able to survive with rules. You know, many of the people in our country play golf. Their golf clubs have rules. Some play tennis, their tennis clubs have rules. Some are athletes and they run in a club. Those clubs have rules. You join voluntarily. And when you join voluntarily, you take the responsibility for what is in that constitution. It can be hard, but it has to be, and we have a big organization. We're not a little small, we have members 1,400, but we have over 12 million supporters that vote for us approximately. And that's, that's the people in this country that we also need to look at. And we believe that if you are a leader in the ANC, then the onus is really on you to do the right thing. Yeah, simple as that.
Okay, Mbali, you guys are taking the last bite.
Yes, please. Been up long.
DSG, since he is saying that what the SG has been charged with, you cannot appeal that first. What does it mean for his position? Does it mean that you will not be filling or having an acting Secretary General until he is cleared by the court? So mean that the ANC will have a top fight for now while the SG deals with his disciplinary process. Where does that leave Secretary General's office?
Secretary General's office is not limping. It has a Deputy Secretary General and a full complement of staff. We have 9 provincial secretaries who are part of the Secretariat. We have 54 regional secretaries who are part of the Secretariat. So we're not limping at all. It is a temporary suspension and it is not permanent. If the SG is found not guilty and he's proved himself in the courts and there is no criminal charge against him, simply come back to his job. That's why it's called a temporary suspension. It's not permanent. It's not supposed to be understood as punitive. That's the answer.
So there will be no SG until this court process is done?
There's a deputy SG, and in terms of our constitution, fulfills all the tasks of the SG in his absence.
Did you just say that the ANC's membership was 1.4?
Our membership in total is 1.4, of whom I think we are about 700,000 now who are in good standing. The rest are in various stages of either waiting in the 6-month period or haven't renewed their membership. They are out of the in good standing period. But it is in the total membership on our membership system is 1.4 million.
On the new system?
On the new system.
Okay. It's almost 100% growth then from the last, what
No,
was it, the last NGC?
No, we achieved the million mark when Khalima Mochanti was the SG. Yeah, it fluctuates because it's not, we look at our membership from the point of view of good standing, waiting period, not in good standing. All 3 categories are taken together and you are left on the membership system until you renew your membership. Yeah. So if you want to renew your membership, easy. you go online now. You've got
www.ancmember.org.za and you join.
Or you renew. Yeah. Very simple.
Bali, are you?
One last one for you. We heard today at the State Capture Commission, another one of your members, the Deputy State Security Minister, Zizi Koto, was implicated, and the evidence said that he had receipts of more than 2 million rand. Is this that you as a party will be looking into, can we see any him being taken for any disciplinary measures or going to the Integrity Commission to go and answer for what he has been implicated for at Taxi Commission?
The Zondo Commission hasn't yet made final findings yet. People are giving evidence. And it's only once they've made final findings that anyone can look at that and say, well, there's a problem and there's a problem. Because we must also be careful not to treat the Zondo Commission like it's a court of law already, you know. Mr. Kodwa has a right of reply, and he also has the right to cross-examine the person who has made the allegations against him. And I think that this is a very important thing to say to you, because I think generally speaking, we regard the Zondo Commission as you know, your name is there, you are doomed. And it's not being seen for what it is. It's a commission of inquiry, and it will make findings. And if it makes negative findings, then we look.
Okay, great. Thank you very much for coming. DSG gave you more than enough time today.
Yeah, next time we'll give you less.